Great. We are going to get started here in just a moment. I want to welcome everybody to the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs presentation on our grants programs. We're looking forward to giving you our PowerPoint presentation, and then Jeff, Garrett, and myself will be available for questions during and after the presentation. I am the program manager for our capital improvement and regional regranting mini grant program. And Jeff Garrett is joining us shortly. He's getting our PowerPoint set up for us. He is the operational support manager, program manager. So for those of you who are not familiar, we're your state arts agency. We reside in the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and we grant out monies from the state budget to arts and cultural organizations throughout the state with several programs that we will be introducing to you today. So we're just going to wait and see how Jeff's doing with our PowerPoint, and then we can get going. Any upfront questions I can take while we're waiting? Feel free to go ahead and type them either in the chat. Okay, let's see. Just a little bit about our process. For those, we just actually completed one of our rounds of grant.
So in case you don't know who we are the State of Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs.
We're good?
Okay.
We were
all right. Thank you very much.
In the 1960s to provide
Take
access
care.
to opportunities to the arts in Michigan. And we exist to provide state and federal tax dollars to arts organizations and eligible entities through a competitive grant making process. And we basically do that to encourage, initiate, and facilitate an enriched artistic, cultural, and creative environment in Michigan. We want to provide you with funding to create artistic events in your region. So a little bit about who we are as a staff. There are 6 of us, and you can see our director there, Allison Watson. And our 2 accounting analysts and financial analysts, Ashley and Adam. And then the 3 of us who are going to be talking to you today, lovingly dubbed the secret sauce. I credit that to Jeff. I am Chad Swan-Badgero. I'm our program manager who oversees our arts and education grant program, our new leaders grant program, and our project support grant program. Jackie Lillis-Warwick, who oversees our capital improvement program and our mini grant program, and Jeff Garrett, who oversees our operational support grant programs. And you'll hear from both of them in just a second. So Jeff's going to talk a little bit about our process and how you apply to us, just from an overview.
Sure thing. Thank you, Chad. So our application is a competitive process in which applicants apply for funding and then go through a jury process and then are awarded funding based on their scores. And so it all begins with step 1, which is you obtain the copy of our guidelines, you create an account in Smart Simple, you log in, you're going to create a profile on that software, and also you're going to submit your application through there. So you create your profile first, and then it'll let you know what you're eligible to apply for. Then you go ahead and apply through the system. Then it goes through a review process, which includes persons from the field, like yourselves and ourselves, who volunteer to read grants on behalf of MCACA and score them. And so your application is reviewed and scored, and then at the end, award amount is based on the applicant's score. And so those of you who receive a score of 80 and above are eligible for funding, and those with a score of 79 and below are not. Either way, no matter what category you fall in, you should always come back after the award announcements has been made, and you should request a copy of your comments so you can see what was great about your application as well as what could be an area for improvement. And finally, if you are awarded funding, you proceed with your project and you complete it, and then you submit a final report. Carrying on, I'm Jeff Garrett, the Operational Support Program Manager. And so for the next 127 slides, or maybe 20 slides, we're going to discuss our 5 MCACA direct grant programs and our 2 mini grant programs. And all of our programs are dependent upon eligibility. So that's all dependent upon your national taxonomy code. And if you're unsure about that, you can always contact us. We can help you out with that. And of course, all of our programs are eligible to 501c3 nonprofit organizations. All our programs also have a one-to-one grant match program, with the exception of mini grant professional development. So the first program we're going to discuss today is operational support. And so operational support is for providing support to arts and cultural nonprofit organizations. For example, museums, galleries, theaters, dance performance centers, and museums, arts and cultural type organizations. And so each program is going to have limited eligibility depending upon your tax code. And so for operational support, our funding is going to be determined by your organization's unrestricted revenue minus in kind. And so we look at 3 years of your organization's history, and then based on that, you are able to determine what your maximum request amount is for operational support funding. And so with looking at operational support, we always ask a few questions to try to help you figure out if you're eligible or not. So are you a nonprofit arts and culture organization? If you're not sure, again, please reach out to us and we'll help you out. Is the applicant tax exempt? Are you physically located in the state of Michigan? Do you have 3 or more consecutive years of operating history? And do you have a DUNS number? What's a DUNS number? A DUNS number is from a Dun & Bradstreet Corporation, and so there is a classification used by the government to classify nonprofit organizations throughout the country. That process is a quick one, usually a 1 or 2 day email response, and then we move on. Are your programs open to the general public? And do you have 3 consecutive years reflecting a minimum of $10,000 in unrestricted revenue over those 3 years? And so the one thing to note about all grant programs, all of them require a budget with the exception of this program, operational support. Operational support does not require a budget. Operational support requires what is called an SMU Data Arts Fund report. So if you're eligible to apply for operations, then you need to contact me and we'll help you out, get you set up with a Data Arts account. And then from there, you will enter in cultural data profiles. So each year that we request, you will enter in information for revenue, expenses, attendance, and a whole host of other data that helps you as an organization in the future. Any questions about that, do not hesitate to reach out and contact me.
To apply in our project support grant program. I want to tell you a little bit about that. Excuse me. So some questions to ask yourself if you are eligible for project support is first, are you a college, a university, a municipality, a non-arts related nonprofit organization? If yes, then let's continue. Are you physically located in the state of Michigan and are your facilities open and accessible to the public? If you answered yes, you may be eligible to apply in project support. So just some basics about our project support grant program. The minimum request for this program is $5,000 and a maximum request of $30,000. All of our grant programs, except for our new Leaders Grant Program, are grants that are awarded on a one-to-one cash basis, match basis, which means that if you're going to ask us for $30,000, you have to then match it with $30,000 as well, so which would mean that you'd have a project that is $60,000 as far as the budget. And again, just to reiterate, all of these grant programs we're talking about right now are for projects through October 1, 2021 through September 30th of 2022. All right, that was really quick. But so before I turn it back over to Jackie, I'll just say that. So if you have questions about whether your project would be eligible for this program, you can certainly ask Jackie at the end of the slide, or you can also email me, and our contacts will be at the end of the slideshow presentation.
Hello, I'm here to talk about capital improvement projects. Capital improvement projects are exactly what they sound like. They are for facilities improvements, and they do also include equipment purchases. So the basics of capital improvement. The request amount is anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. So that means if you're asking us for $5,000, your project is $10,000 with a maximum project budget of $200,000. This too is a one-to-one match. And for this one, you can accept newly manufactured product or as an in-kind match, but labor is not eligible for an in-kind match. Same as all the other ones, are you eligible for capital improvement program? And you have to answer yes to all these. Are you a Michigan municipality or nonprofit arts and cultural organization? Do you have tax exempt status under Section 501c3? Some things that are not included are federal state agencies are not eligible. Friends groups, neighborhood associations, economic development organizations, basically anything that exists to raise money for another organization does not qualify. So sports, boosters, that sort of thing. Are you physically located in the state of Michigan? All of our direct grants are going to have this requirement. And then, of course, will the proposed project be able to be completed between October 1st and September 30th of 2022. The important thing about that date, though, is for capital improvement, it's very important that you convey in your application process that your project is completely doable within this time frame. That's what the reviewers are going to be looking at to see that you can complete in their scoring process. So if you have a very ambitious project and you say you want to do the whole roof and you're going to do all the windows and you're going to build 15 walls in all that time, reviewers might pause and think, can they really do that in that 1 year time frame? So you might want to think about breaking down some of your projects into phases so that you can come back to us year after year and apply for grants. So if you want to do the whole roof and the whole roof is going to cost $350,000, well, then you might want to think about coming and asking us to do phase A of your roof, which is maybe just the north facing part. And then you come back in 2022 for the fiscal year 23 and ask us to do the south facing roof. So you think about that as you're putting this together, that really what capital looks at mostly is that you can complete this project in the time frame given. As I mentioned, there's two categories for capital improvement: facility improvement and equipment. Facility improvement is funding assistance for expansions, renovations, constructions of your arts and cultural facilities. This includes permanent fixtures and mechanisms that cannot be removed without altering the building structure itself. On the flip side of that is equipment purchases, and these are purchases that are considered mobile. So you can basically take them out of the facility and move with them if needed. Because with the facility improvement, one of the things the reviewers are going to be looking at is if you own your building or if you have a long-term lease, they don't really want to pay for you to install an elevator if you're going to get kicked out the following year so that another organization can come in and benefit. With equipment purchases, they take into consideration mobility and if you can move that. So if you only have a long-term lease, equipment purchases are something you might want to look at.
All right, thanks, Jackie. Since many of you are here with festivals, perhaps the other two grant programs that we offer may not be sort of in your wheelhouse, but I still want to just sort of throw them out there really briefly. So in case there's any schools or other young people in your community that you can let them know about these opportunities to apply through MCACA. So two of those programs that I also oversee are arts and education. And these are for K through 12 schools that are doing some sort of arts related project. Schools can apply between $5,000 and $20,000. And like our other programs, that is a match program. So they have to match whatever they're requesting from us with cash. So if you have schools in your community that are doing some sort of arts related project, we'd love for you to let them know about our arts and education program. Our other program that is near and dear to my heart program, and this is for projects that are associated with a youth or teen council or young professionals group. So there's a pretty wide eligibility about who can apply to this as long as there's a youth or teen council or young professionals group involved. And it's for projects that are led by a young person between the ages of 14 and 30. And this is more, the request in this program is more in line with our mini grant program, which Jackie's going to talk about in a second, with a maximum request of up to $4,000. And there's not a match requirement for new leaders. So if perhaps you have a young person that would like to try a sort of arm or an offshoot of your festival that you've got going on, and there's a sort of council, a youth council or a professionals group associated with that, they may want to look at the new leaders to help fund the work that they're doing with that. My contact information is there at the bottom of the screen if you have more questions about these two grant programs.
Okay, next up we have our regional regranting program. This program is designed to work with partners in each region of the state. As you can see from this graphic, we've got 15 partners, and they really help us get into every corner of the state with our funding opportunities. They administer 2 grants on our behalf, and they do a couple other little things. They also are responsible for convening arts and cultural people in their region and just kind of getting everybody together and advocating for us. And this is the way that the MCACA really ensures that our money reaches every corner that it possibly can, is through these partnerships that we have in each of the regions. So we have two mini grant programs that they administer on our behalf. One is the Arts Project and the other one is Professional Organizational Development. The deadlines for these grants are separate from our June 1st direct grant deadlines. So the mini grant deadlines are August 3rd at 5 p.m. And then some regions either hold money back or have enough money left over after round 1 to host a round 2. And that deadline is on January 15th at 5 p.m. So that would be something you contacted your regional grantor about, is if they're holding a round 2. Something to note, an applicant can only receive one mini grant arts project and or POD opportunity within a grant cycle. So you cannot apply in both round 1 and round 2 and receive funding. So Arts Project, this is a scaled down version of our Project Support Direct Grant. It is up to $4,000 with a 1-to-1 cash match or in kind. So that's different from our direct grants that are right there. This grant is to assist in a project as listed here. And again, it has an eligibility quiz. So can you answer these 3 questions? Yes, then you are eligible. Again, pointing out that the project must take place within our fiscal year. Professional organizational development is up to $1,500. Now this has a 1-to-4 match of cash or in kind. And these grants are designed to help organizations or individuals with professional development opportunities. So are you eligible to apply for a POD grant? Again, answer yes to these 3 questions, pointing out that as an individual artist or arts administrator, you can apply for one of these grants. Are you applying to a conference, education, or training opportunity that's going to increase your knowledge or skill, or will your organization be working with a consultant that will assist with planning needs, assessment, and grant writing with your organization? The important thing to note about these POD opportunities is that they are the one grant that you can apply to and use the money outside of the state of Michigan. So if you want to go to Arizona and study with a ceramicist out in Arizona and increase and develop your skill set as a ceramicist better, then by all means apply for a POD and go and talk about how you got money from the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs to do that. Because this is our way of giving you money to then go out and talk about us on a nationwide level. So the POD opportunities are something that's great for any of you out there who run a festival or event, because if you want to take a course on grant writing, or if you want to have somebody come in and do a strategic plan for your organization, that's why you would apply for a POD opportunity. We also have 2 other grants that they administer on our behalf, but these are not juried. POD and Arts Projects are both juried by panelists as well as our direct grants. The bus grant opportunity is to provide transportation for K-12 schools to get to an arts and cultural organization for that experience. And this is something that you just fill out a very simple 1-page application and you submit that to the regional grantor, and they just review it for accuracy and then reimburse you the funding after you have completed that activity. And then the other one is arts equipment and supplies grants. And this again is just a simple application that is reviewed for accuracy by the regional grantor, and then the money is provided reimbursement wise after you have purchased the materials for your K-12 classroom.
Great, thanks, Jackie. So now that we've talked to you about the opportunities, the direct grants that we offer through MCACA, as well as our mini grants through our regional granting agencies, we wanted to just talk to you really briefly about a little bit of advice that we have when crafting your overall grant application that we've learned over time has helped applicants score best at our the review panel process. So these next 2 slides are just going to talk about how to craft a good budget and the things to think about there, as well as just overall aspects to think about when putting together your grant application. So first, the first slide, this is just really about financial tips. We find that a lot of our organizations stumble the most when putting together their budget, and that can be the part that they struggle with a lot. So, so we just want, the first thing, make sure that your revenues and expenses are categorized correctly. There is a bullet point list about ways in which you can label your revenues and expenses that are showing up in your budget. So make sure that you're labeling those correctly and that you, in a way that reviewers can understand. You want to make sure that your project budget reflects your required match amount. So check your grant guidelines that if what you're requesting from MCACA requests a cash match, that we see that as well in your budget and how that money is going to be used. And is your budget balanced? This is a really basic one, but make sure that if you are asking us, if you've got $10,000 in revenue, that you also have $10,000 in expenses, and that those two sides of your budget balance. Also, to a little bit more specificity to what Jackie mentioned about your financials and when your project runs, you want to make sure that all grant activities take place within our accepted grant time period. And for this next cycle, it's going to be October 1 of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. And that means that any planning, any purchases you make, any grant activities all take place in that time frame and not outside of it. And just as you're thinking ahead, all of our applications for our direct grants require a $50 application fee, except for our mini grants. So keep that in mind as you're making plans to apply to us. And if you have questions specifically about financial aspects of your application, our two staff members, Adam or Ashley, can answer the questions in that regard. And then a few other bits of advice that we've seen as program managers that we hope will help you out. First, the best place to start is to read the guidelines. We generally will release our new grant guidelines for the coming grant cycle. So for you guys, in late February or early March is when our grant guidelines will come out, and they'll be on our website. So start with reading them first and read them all the way through. And as Jeff often likes to say, maybe read them even 10 times. If you can't stomach 10 times, maybe, okay, 8 times. But make sure you start by reading the guidelines. It's going to answer so many questions that you have, and it'll also help you start to brainstorm how you're going to frame your grant project and the things that you're going to have to gather for the application. So start by reading the guidelines. It seems elementary, but it's the place to start. And don't wait till the last minute. We'll open our system for applications in March. And the deadline is in June. So if you start early, that gives you the opportunity to gather all the necessary pieces and also contact us if you have questions. If you wait until the grant deadline day, you're going to struggle with getting in touch with us and you're going to be panicked, and we don't want that. And as it says, ask us for help. We really want to help you. We want you to score really well at the panel review process. And if you start early and you contact us, we really are eager to help you. Things to keep in mind, the English teacher in me wants to tell you that when you're approaching your grant narrative and all of the pieces of your application, that you are clear, concise, and compelling. So you're using language that makes sense to people who perhaps aren't part of your organization. And that you're also using the space in your application to good effect. So we don't want you to go over and use 9 pages for your narrative. You have to stay within the accepted limit of the guidelines, and that you're being exciting and compelling in the way that you're writing your narrative and talking about your project. Your passion and your excitement about the project that you're facilitating is the best way to get the review panelists to get excited about what you're doing as well. Check your spelling and grammar. That seems easy and maybe even redundant in the age of spell check, but make sure those are easy things that can either help your application look professional and great, or can make it look sort of sloppy to reviewers. So check your spelling and your grammar. Make sure that you keep your online presence up to date. In today's day and age, panelists are going to go to your website and they're going to check out the things that you're talking about, and we want to make sure that you've got up-to-date information on your website and on your social media platforms, and that it's not data from, say, 3 years ago. Use links in your narrative. So if you feel like there are things that maybe review panelists will have questions about and you want to direct them to someplace online, use links to help fill in some of the gaps that perhaps your narrative doesn't have room for. That's a great way to sort of help reviewers really understand and go deep as far as the project that you're explaining. And then a big one is, if you're going to make a claim, make sure that you back it up. So be wary or cautious about broad terms like world-class and high quality or underserved. What high class means in your community might be different than what other communities throughout the state or the country understand when you say high class. So make sure that if you make a claim, that you can back it up and you can explain it with data and information and examples. And lastly, again, with all of the means in which we have to tell a story today, whether it be photos or video or virtual tours, use those opportunities to help the panel see and hear the type of work that you're doing, and perhaps not just through your narrative. So keep these tips in mind when putting your grant application together.
Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and jump in live right here. So we lost the audio on that last slide, but real quick. So this is the eligibility program chart. And so what this means is this will help you determine what grants you can and should apply for. For example, if you're an arts and culture organization, right here, so you can apply for operational support. You could apply for capital improvement. You could apply for new leaders. You could apply for mini grant arts projects, and you could apply for mini grant professional or organizational development. So if you're a nonprofit arts and culture organization, you could apply for 5 grants. The catch is this last column on the right here, where you, if you apply for both operations and mini grant arts projects, and you're awarded funds in both, you have to select which one you'd like to keep and decline the other. So you can apply for 5, but you can only receive funding in 4. Or for example, if you're a nonprofit organization, but not an arts and cultural nonprofit, then your nonprofit organization, you would apply for project support for a specific project, and then also new leaders, and you could apply for mini grant arts projects, and you could apply for a mini grant POD. But again, the catch is if you're awarded funding in both project support and mini grant arts projects, you have to select one and decline the other. Then the list goes on from there. But a way to think about eligibility is this. If you run a festival or an event, and even if you have nonprofit organizations that participate in your event, such as the local arts and culture organizations, or if you have the city or the municipality participates in your event, or if local churches or local schools and others participate in your event, then you can encourage them to apply for MCACA grants, and then they can basically pay you to do the project. So it helps out. So the big thing to consider here is partnerships. If you're not eligible, then consider partnerships with organizations that are eligible. And finally, so we have a lean group today, but every single one of you people that are listening right now, you could all apply for the mini grant professional development. For example, if you were going to attend a conference as an arts and cultural administrator, which most of you are here at this convention, then you could apply for POD funding or professional development funding to attend a workshop or a conference, such as there's one that happens every year in the fall in Michigan. It's called the Michigan Festivals and Events Association Convention. You could use this grant program to apply for that, to attend that workshop. But also, as Jackie stated earlier, you could also use that professional development grant to attend out-of-state conferences. And we actually encourage Michigan organizations to do that simply because if you attend a workshop or a conference out of state, then you can let people know what's happening in Michigan, and you can also find out what's happening elsewhere. So it's two-way street. Other than that, I'm going to move on to the last slide, which is just our contact information. So if you have any questions later on, then you can always send us an email or give us a call. Right now, due to quarantine and offsite and virtual and whatnot, email is going to be the most efficient way to get a hold of us. And you can also request a copy of this PowerPoint. If you want to copy the PowerPoint, we'll email it to you, no problem. I think that the convention is also going to keep it recorded as well, so you can go back and revisit it. But one thing to note is that all of us staff are all here to help you guys out. And so if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us with questions or clarifications. And with that, we're going to wrap up here. We still have a few minutes left, like 20. So if anyone has any questions or if you want to chat about your program or your project, and go ahead. Or I can sit here awkwardly for the next 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll just log out.
I'll sit next to you in that awkward silence, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
We have a question, Jeff. It's what are the grant opportunities for a 501c6?
Can you describe what a 501c6 is? We fund a variety of 501s.
It's a Chamber of Commerce.
Yep. So then Chamber of Commerce would apply for funding in the project support program.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then could also
Capital
apply for mini grants as well. So yeah, we have a few chambers that apply for funding.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get that question every year at this convention. And I always ask the same thing, what is that?
Yeah.
Oh, Chamber of Commerce. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Make a note. We'll add it to the spiel next year. Any other questions? Yeah, if you're a newly formed 501c3 group operating in cinema, that qualifies for our grant applications. And if you have registered with the state of Michigan and you have that paperwork completed, that is definitely eligible for our various direct and mini grants.
Specifically, so you wouldn't be able to apply for operational support yet because you have to have 3 years of operating history, but you could definitely apply for capital improvement. So if you needed to purchase equipment.
Yep.
And so if you don't, go ahead, Jackie.
No, if you're newly formed, you're probably looking at getting things up and going. So yeah, capital improvement would definitely be something. But usually a lot of the newly formed arts and cultural organizations start with our mini grant program kind of as a stepping stone to our direct grants. So take a look at the, the arts project or the POD opportunities. You might want some staff training. And that would be great for POD, or if you're holding events or projects, that's the mini grant arts projects. And then definitely take a hard look at the capital improvement program, because you can receive both capital improvement and one of our mini grants in the same fiscal year. So that's an opportunity for a newly formed group.
And January 15th is the deadline for mini grant arts projects and POD.
Yeah, for second round. Yeah, and we have quite a few. And we do have quite a few. I don't have the regions off the top of my head, but quite a few of our regional regranters are hosting round 2s this year, just because with COVID, a lot of organizations weren't clear on their status for the August 5th deadline. So there's a lot of that leftover money hanging out there for round 2 that ends on January 15th. So please contact your regional regranter directly. They'll be able to best help walk you through that process and let you know if they're hosting a round 2.
And then sometimes groups that, let's say you're a nonprofit organization and you operate a program within a building, but the building is owned by someone else. For example, sometimes a city or a municipality will own the theater, but then a nonprofit organization will operate inside that theater. And so in this case, it's rare, but in this case, the municipality could apply for capital improvement funds to improve the building. And then the occupant inside the building, the nonprofit inside the building, can apply for funding as well. And so if you're an organization that's applying for capital and you don't own the building, then you of course want to apply for equipment. So that way, if you leave, you can take it with you.
Right, but also if you can demonstrate, a lot of those instances, like we have some theater groups that apply for capital improvement, but they're housed within a city owned building, and they can demonstrate that they've got, a partnership, a long-term lease or a long-term partnership with the city, or even just a long-term partnership with a landlord or something. Sometimes we can consider capital improvement facility projects for in instances like those. Yeah, so Andrew is mentioning that they're renting the building for the cinema. So you might want to, it depends on what your lease looks like and what the longevity of that occupancy is, but you might want to think about equipment. And for, cinema, that can include a lot, like lights, it can include sound equipment, it can include projection equipment, chairs, that sort of thing. So there's a lot that can go into that equipment that you can still bulk up your newly formed organization.
Great. Any additional questions? You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have a long-term lease and you can demonstrate, that's, like a 20-year lease, I think is, kind of the example we use, then you can apply for a facility improvement. But you just want to make sure that in that 4-page narrative, you're really demonstrating to the reviewers that, you're not going anywhere. There's an agreement, there's a partnership, because that's something that our reviewers take a look at for the facilities improvements, especially. And we do ask that you attach evidence, proof of ownership, or something along those lines. So just as long as you can really hammer that point home, you're set. Great. And yeah, Jeff put our contact up there, but we have the website, and definitely, even though we are working remotely, I think everybody's been great on response time. The regional granters are really great too, as a resource for when you're applying to our mini grant program. A lot of ours have been in that role long term, and they've really seen it all. And I bet most of you have worked with them before, and so they're a great resource on our mini grant program. If you need help finding your regional grantor, by all means, send me an email, or if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer. And they will be a great resource as well. And they do a lot of their own mini grant workshops too. So you'll see, I don't know if they do them for the round 2 necessarily, but ahead of that August 5th deadline, most of our regional grantors will host some sort of workshop for mini grant applicants. And you can get that information directly from the regional grantor websites. Jeff, we were just so thorough, apparently.
We were a lot of information.
That's when we pre-recorded our PowerPoint, so I think that helped with cutting down on a lot of the in-between banter, which is good or bad.
Right.
So it says, do you still offer a young professional grant? That's the new leader grant that Chad talked about a little bit before, I imagine you're referring to. And yes, that's still offered, but that's offered on our direct grant fiscal year September 30th to October 1st deadline. So that deadline for that one has already passed. So if you're looking at that grant, you're going to want to think about that for fiscal year 22. And I think, as Jeff mentioned, those are going to be opening most likely in March. Usually we try and get our grant cycle going the second week of March. And we're going to try and do,
Yes, really.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're going to try, depending on where we are with our COVID situation, if we can't get out to the state and do our usual grant workshop tour, we're going to kind of tighten up what we just did here for you and make that widely available and do some live sessions too. And we also did offer during the last grant cycle, when we were all housebound, we were doing office hours. So each program manager took a chunk of time each week to be available on just an open, it'll be Microsoft Teams line this time, but I think it was Skype last time, just an open line, and you could pop in and out and ask some questions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah. So back to the new leader. So the new leaders grant is really it's a pretty wide net as far as who can apply and what the projects are. So if you're thinking about new leaders, then I would definitely consider getting with Chad and running your program by him, and then he can give you some advice, maybe how to approach the application. So, and then you can do that with all the programs. I mean, that's why Jackie and Chad and myself are all here, because our job is to help you guys through the application process as well as the final report process. And right now, the big things on your calendar should be January 15th. So that would be for a mini grant. So consider mini grants that would occur somewhere this coming summer. So beginning March 1 through September 30th of 2021. But then also June 1, this summer, June 1 is the deadline for all the MCACA direct grants, the operational support, project support, new leaders, arts education, capital improvement. Those are all due June 1. So again, January 15th for mini grants, and then June 1st for MCACA direct grants.
Right. And for those of you who didn't maybe apply this year but have applied in the past, just know that we've used a new grant system. It's called Smart Simple. So eGrant has gone the way of the dodo, and now we have this new Smart Simple system that, depending on who you talk to, is smart and simple or is not smart and simple. I happen to think it's smart and simple.
Only an anthropologist would use the term way of the dodo.
Yeah, Carla mentioned how she waited too long to apply last year and got overwhelmed. And I think, Jeff mentioned, or Chad mentioned too, is, reading the guidelines. And then the other thing we like to stress is, giving yourself plenty of time, especially with our new system. I think a lot of people were overwhelmed with having to kind of work in a new system. But if you start maybe in, we open the system in March, kind of get in there and at least, get your
Org info.
Yeah, get your organizational information updated or input if you haven't even done one yet, and then just kind of start. It's really nice because the system just allows you to kind of keep going back in and adding as you go. So, just kind of drop, things as you come across them. If you're doing operational support, you got to have that funders report. That's something you can easily kind of update right away. You don't have to, wait to get a group of people together to collaborate on a narrative or anything like that. You can start getting estimates together for if you're doing a capital improvement project and you want to do some estimates or gathering information on costs. Because one of the things the capital improvement will ask you for is proof of costs. You can start, those discussions and start formulating some of that application process and then kind of return back and add as you go. Jeff, do you know if they can go back in and get their organizational info now, or do they have to wait till March? I think they can do it now.
It'll be, because the system will open, I think in a week or so with regard to mini grant applications. Yeah. So then they can go on, be able to update or revise the org profile then. Yeah, that's one thing I think I forgot to mention throughout this whole thing is that for that round 2 funding, the system's going to open next week sometime. I don't have an exact date, but we'll be posting that wide and far on social media and our listserv and e-blast, and regional regranters will be getting the information out there too, that the system will be open to accept round 2 of mini grant applications. So at that point, when the system's open, if you just applied in one of our regular ones this last fiscal year, you'll be able to go in and kind of update and do that sort of thing with the organizational info. Oh, Jackie, I have a question off the street. Hold on.
Oh boy, you're going to do a voice.
What if I want to apply for a professional development grant, but yet the event hasn't happened? I don't have any information about it.
Oh, I'm so glad that Peanut, that we got that question from the back row. Yes, Jeff, we, person in the back row, if you want to attend a conference or a professional development opportunity that hasn't occurred yet and their information's not posted, feel free to go and look at what it was last year, what the fees were associated with that last year, and throw that on the application, and then just use a little bit of that narrative to explain, these are the expenses from last year, so I'm kind of basing my projected costs on that.
Oh, another question.
Okay.
Who reads these grants, and can I read them?
Oh, yes, you can read them. So we put together a panel of experts to review each of our grants. So they usually consist of about 5 individuals, and they read about 20 grants each. And then we host, I don't know, what was it, about 14? Or no, it was like 20 review sessions over the summer. We put the panels together, and then these people come together. This year we had to do them virtually. If we ever get back to normal, I'm using air quotes, we would like to do them in person again. Yeah, we'd like to do them in person. But so a panel of experts will review all the grant applications and score them according to the criteria laid out in the guidelines. And then we put that score together. And then as Jeff mentioned at the top of the hour, anything that's 80 and above scores gets recommended for funding. Now it's really, I think 80 is what operational support went down to for their funding awards. But for capital improvement, it's so competitive that this year, especially since we did incur a slight budget cut, capital was only able to fund down to 90 points. So if they score 90 and above, they got some percentage of their funding request. So a review panel will review each of your applications at the mini grant level. They do the same thing. They convene a panel of experts to review each of the mini grant applications. And then just depending on the size of the region, how many applicants they have, the panel can consist of anywhere from 3 to maybe 14 individuals, and they have 1 to 2 days of review panels.
And so to become a reviewer, you can visit our website or send us an email, and you can nominate yourself to review grant applications. So there's no better professional development than reading 15 to 20 applications by other organizations because then you'll figure out what's really successful in applying and what's not. And so it'll help you become a better grant writer as well. But to nominate yourself or to become a reviewer for MCACA, You can visit our website, you can send us an email, or you can log into Smart Simple or create your own account and then nominate yourself to review grants. And so, like I said, if you're a grant reviewer, you receive anywhere from 15 to 20 some grant applications. You review and score them based on the criteria. So applicants are encouraged to follow the guidelines and the criteria, and then you hold up the criteria and you basically score them based on how well they address each of the review criteria. And then you'll meet. Used to meet in person. We'll see what happens this upcoming FY21 season, but you will meet one day, usually for about 2 to 3 hours, where you'll meet with the other people that have read the same applications you've read, and you'll discuss them and then finalize your score. And then at the completion of that, you get a modest $100 honorarium just for your time. But again, the big benefit here is the fact that if you're applying for MCACA funding and then you read other applications, then you will definitely become better at this process. And one thing to add, so if and when you apply for MCACA funding, you will also be able to, one, log in or visit or call in and listen to the review of your application. You cannot participate, like you can't debate it, but you can definitely sit there and listen and take notes to what other people perceive your application. And then at the end of the review panels and after the awards announcements are done in the middle of September, then you can also log in and you the reviewer comment. This will help you in the drafting of next year's applications, because you'll find out what was successful, what you want to leave in, and then also look at areas for improvement where you could go back and tweak things, make them a little bit better, and ideally increase your score.
Yeah. And what I noticed is a lot of the time, some of the comments are just, in following up with some of the applicants who read the reviewers' comments, is that they just didn't effectively communicate some of their points. You know, they didn't explain what they were as an organization, or they took things for granted that the reviewers would just know. So something to keep in mind is just that, you know, if you're cinema, you got to understand that the 5 people reviewing your application may not all be in the cinema or theater arena. So if you're using specialized terminology or specialized terms, then you might want to take a few minutes to explain that in your narrative, a few sentences or words to explain that in your narrative, or use an attachment or something like that. So again, clarity. The other thing I want to point out is budgets tend to scare the you know what out of arts and cultural organizations. It's not everybody's forte. So that I know on the capital improvement that the budget was kind of the big scary in the room, especially during the review panels. So our 2 finance and compliance folks that that were introduced at the beginning of the PowerPoint, Adam and Ashley, they're extremely accessible and easy to get a hold of, and they really just want to help people do their best on their application. So if you're having any questions about any of the budget information, you know, obviously you can contact one of the program managers, but you can also go directly to Adam or Ashley, and they're happy to walk you through that process too. It doesn't have to be intimidating.
Great. I just had a request for someone to send us a copy of the PowerPoint, so I'll do that here this morning after this meeting.
Sounds good.
Looks like we have about. Haven't had anything in responses in a bit, so let's.
Yeah, let them get some coffee.
All good.
All right.
Right.
Thank you, everybody, for having us and listening to us talk today.
This is interesting. This is what we're all doing now on the virtual realm.
I know this was our first time presenting like this, so thank you for your patience, and hopefully we still were able to deliver our message. Sounds like we were. So.
Sounds great. Okay, Jackie, well, I'm going to go ahead and log out.
Thanks,
and then, again, yeah, anyone with questions, again, don't hesitate to contact us, and have a good weekend.
Bye, everybody.